everyone. Welcome to our next episode of our podcast. And today we are talking to Joe Belfiore, who has amazing 33 years of career at Microsoft, working on a wide range of products, which I can't even list. We'll want to hear from him. And right now he's enjoying some time off from work, but has agreed to come and talk to us. So thanks, Joe. Really appreciate your time and welcome to our podcast series.
Thanks. I'm excited to be here.
Awesome. So I think the first thing, we have this the Pacific Northwest local product group. Our intention is that we have so much of talent over here. We want to get to know our product community, and this is our podcast attempt. This is our attempt through podcast. So can you just talk briefly through your journey and the products you have touched, you have worked, to give us an idea on how your journey has been?
Sure. So I came to Microsoft right out of college, and it was back in 1990, so very long ago. And actually, the first product I worked on at Microsoft was OS2. And I bet you most of the people watching this won't remember. OS2 was the first attempt by Microsoft and IBM together to create an operating system for IBM-compatible PCs before Windows. And it was kind of funny because the first day I showed up at Microsoft, I went to lunch with this person who was going to be my mentor. And this was in the summer of 1990, after Windows 3.0 had shipped. And everybody, the senior people at Microsoft, knew that Microsoft was going to shift over to Windows. And so this person that took me to lunch and said, "Oh, I think you should install Windows on your computer." And I said, "What's that?" Which is pretty crazy in retrospect, since probably most of my career I've worked on Windows versions and Windows related products. So that's everything from Windows 95, Windows XP, Windows 10, Windows Phone, Windows Media Center. That's where most of my years have been spent. And it's also funny, I joined Microsoft coming from doing a computer science degree at Stanford, really excited about this job role at Microsoft called Program Manager, which was where you got to think about what the software would do. You worked with engineers and designers and marketers, and you wrote the spec and you defined the software's capabilities, and you didn't write code. And I thought, oh my gosh, this is heaven.
So what's that new role that was created? Like, would love to understand, when did this start coming into picture?
Yeah, it was somewhat new. I think the PM role had maybe been around for 2 or 3 years. A guy named Jay Blumenthal had created the PM role, I think first for Excel and the Office apps. And so at the time I joined, I think the first big project I worked on that I shipped was Windows 95. And for the Windows 95 shell, I was a lead PM, and there were 2 other PMs that were working on the shell, all of the taskbar and start menu and all these things that came into Windows 95. And obviously our teams are much bigger now.
Wow. And then you progressed in working on Windows multiple.
Yeah. And I should also mention, as you said, I just left Microsoft last summer, and the last job I was in, I co-ran the Office product group. So, I've had a career that really has spanned operating systems, devices, some entertainment stuff. For a little while, I worked on Zune, and it concluded with all the apps that everyone knows and loves that are part of the Office suite.
Awesome. So I think through your journey, one of the things like people always have question in the product is like, oh, how do I get from this level to this level, or what happens? And everybody have in their journey those pivoting moments that happen. It could be product, it could be the person you work with, it could be just that all the stars align for you. Yeah. So can you just talk to a couple of instances in your career that you felt was
Sure. It's kind of fun for me to go back and think about pivotal moments at all these different phases in my career. And the first one that I'll pick is 1993 or 1994. I'm in my early 20s. I'm working on Windows 95, and we're trying to create a new user interface for Windows. And you gotta remember that back then there was no internet. We didn't have telemetry. The way this worked is that designers and engineers and PMs collaborated on a spec, and then you'd write code. And the only way you got data was by showing it to people. And so I think the first pivotal moment in my career was back then we would do a weekly usability study. And every week we would put our code in front of real users and we had like 10 common tasks. These are really simple things like, here's your new computer, go launch an application, go, create a document and save it, now print it. And we would run this usability test every week. And in the beginning, I was horrified at how much our users struggled with everything. And I think the biggest lesson I learned then was that when you're designing and building software, you tend to think about the part that you've defined, and you tend to ignore the 1,000 other distractions that are everywhere all around everyone. And that the way to become successful at designing and building software is to become a systems thinker and be able to imagine all of the distractions and context and design in that. And so for me, I think the first defining moment was watching people struggle and beginning to appreciate how much text changes matter and how much distractions matter and how much all these things that you think are not related really are. Next, I'll pick, it was probably around 2009. I was now working on Windows Phone. And for those of you who remember Windows Phone, Microsoft had a mobile effort for many years. And then the iPhone shipped, and the iPhone changed everything. This was Apple. What Apple did was they combined the internet, the iPod, and a phone into a single device with capacitive touch, but that's not all they did. They did an exclusive deal with AT&T, which subsidized down the super expensive price of a very fancy cutting edge piece of hardware, so it became affordable. And we launched into trying to compete with that. At the same time, Google bought the software that became Android, and they popularized it through being free open source. And there were a couple of things that were giant pivotal moments for me, one positive and one negative. The positive one, I think a thing that we did in Windows Phone that made an enormous difference in the quality of the software experience was building a pipeline where our engineers used 3D hardware acceleration to create these beautiful swoopy animations, but it was all authored through a markup language that our designers could change. And what that meant was the designers who cared about craftsmanship and perfection and tuning all of these animations and the text and the pixel positioning, the designers could do that themselves. And because we empowered designers, the level of polish and quality in the experience was way better. And I think people still to this day will say to me, oh, I had a Windows Phone, I really liked it. And I think a big part of the reason was because we empowered design to tune the experience so much. I'd say the negative learning for me, or negative pivotal moment, which is I think advice to leaders, is more along the lines of thinking systematically and thinking about context. We failed to create this virtuous cycle of a business model, a go-to-market, partner alignment, and product. And so we shipped a product that cost money. Our OEMs had to pay for it. It was not open source. We were trying to compete with the quality of experience that the iPhone shipped, but our OEMs and our partners, they weren't going to invest like Apple was. And yet at the same time, we did not do free open source like Google did. And so today you see, where did the market end up? It ended up with one premium product, largely built end to end by one company that invested massively in it, and then a high volume distributed product that was done at low cost generally to the partners. And we were kind of a tweener in there.
Yeah, I think trying to both boards, right? Trying to ride the both boards, yeah.
Yeah, and that didn't work. I think I'll pick two more if you don't mind.
Yeah, so more the better.
Another defining moment for me was after Windows Phone, moving over to work on Windows 10. Mm-hmm. And it was kind of a full circle experience for me personally, because like I said, back in the Windows 95 days, I had worked on the taskbar and the start menu. And, there was this little group of us that first put the start menu into Windows. And we understood why it mattered so much, and how having a single entry point with all this, sort of summary of what you would do would be very effective for people. And if you remember, the years before Windows 10, Microsoft launched Windows 8. And the team that built Windows 8 was trying to respond to the iPad. They were focused on enabling a touch experience they kind of went full screen and they got rid of the start menu. And unfortunately, we kind of had a bit of a customer revolt. That team was well-intentioned. They were trying to build a touch experience for touch devices, but the problem was that so many of the PCs that still shipped in that time frame were not touch devices. And so that UI didn't really make sense. And so when our team came along to revisit that UI change, not only did we go and change the UI, but we changed the delivery model. And for me, that's the pivotal moment. This was when we tried to turn Windows into a service. We tried to ensure that we would deliver software that would update regularly, that we would build telemetry in so we could see, understand, and react to the changes that our customers were experiencing. And so this for us was what's now common practice for product managers on all kinds of experiences. It's hypothesis and iteration informed by telemetry. But for me, working on operating systems and devices, that was a revelation. And it's relatively late in the technology lifecycle that it happened for us with Windows 10. And then the last one I'll pick, as part of Windows 10, we revised our web browser. And the team that I ran took the old Internet Explorer code base and built the new browser, Microsoft Edge. Yeah. And we were very proud and excited about this. We used this new application platform that was built into Windows 10 that helped to manage these applications. They could be updated from a store, at least hypothetically. We didn't do that for our web browser initially. They had better process management. They had better data storage management. And we believed that this new browser would be great and people would like it. Well, it didn't turn out that way. And the lesson for me, years later, the Edge team, we threw out that code base. And it was this, that we used this code name Trident. Some of your viewers are familiar with Trident. It's the core web rendering engine that used to be part of Internet Explorer and was originally part of Edge. And what happened was we just didn't have good enough web compatibility. And we worked on it. And it wasn't until we recognized the dynamics of the web that all of the web authors they'd test on Chrome, which had the highest volume, and then they would test or fix bugs for Edge, which just didn't have high enough volume. And so we had to be willing to ignore our NIH, not invented here, tendencies. We had to not be engineering focused and love our code. And instead, we had to throw it out and move to open source Chromium, which was a big, dramatic decision for us to make at Microsoft. And I call it a pivotal moment for me and for our team in terms of being brave and making a decision that was user focused in the face of a real engineering challenge. And now Edge is doing much better. Like it's generally beloved. It gets great reviews. Its usage has grown. And I think if we hadn't made that brave decision, that never would have happened. So, I've had this career that's had so many of these interesting product experiences and, being early enough to do things sometimes before it was commonplace, but then in also cases being late. And I think all of these are great lessons for people.
There's so much of I would love to have a separate conversation, but if you think from it, when you joined, the PM was just upcoming role to the point where now product is considered really crucial for development. So my question to you is how you have seen product development life cycle evolving, and now we're in the reckoning phase, right, with AI. What do you think from your vantage point that AI is going to further change it? What should product managers be wary of or be learning? How do you see that?
Actually, I love that question. And it's kind of funny because in some ways, I feel like I chose to leave Microsoft at a great time because what's going on there right now, there's such intensity and focus. And, part of me is glad to not be part of that. But on the other hand, part of me feels like I'm missing a giant, important, historic moment in the industry. And that said, I did have the lucky opportunity before I left. I think it was September of 2022. At the time, I'm co-running Office, and there was an offsite with a bunch of senior folks where we saw demos of GPT-4.
Wow.
This is before ChatGPT is shipped because Microsoft is partnering with OpenAI. And we were blown away. And it was obvious that the natural language models, these large language models, would enable a kind of interaction that would really up-level the capability of what all of our software could do. So we spent a couple of months building prototypes, and I actually worked with a few people and wrote the first document that was Copilot in Microsoft's flagship apps, and tried to define what the core capabilities would be. We came up with 5 things. This is things like content generation and doing Q&A and summaries, giving suggestions, helping with collaboration. And I think we're at the beginning of a time where, first we're going to see, and in some ways, Microsoft has some real advantages here, these giant, highly capable code bases. Like take Office as an example. It's 35 plus years of engineering, tons and tons of features, but very difficult to expose all that capability to users. Like if you try to put it in menus and dialog boxes, it's too much. But what natural language can do, what large language models can do, is marry higher level semantic intent with a rich set of capabilities and automation. And suddenly people can start expressing much more general ideas. Make my document look professional. Or they can ask questions of a giant spreadsheet. In what region did I pay the highest salaries? And so this is going to have an unbelievable impact, in my opinion, on unlocking the capabilities that's latent in so many of our software systems. And it's kind of interesting because I think we'll see brand new startups do amazing new things that have not been done before. But I also think we'll see giant established companies and code bases like we have at Microsoft exposing unbelievable new power because it can be expressed in such a more friendly way. The other thing that I'm really excited about, you asked about product management and AI. We have seen, and before I left, this was just in the earliest stages. It's the beginning of being able to use prompting as engineering. And so
prompt engineering is the next big thing.
Yeah, my opinion is that, the role of the engineer will change a lot, and so will the role of the product manager. But the role of the product manager is likely to move in a direction where product managers write spec in text that's given to a large language model, and then it's directly realized as features in code. Much like the example I gave of our designers on Windows Phone being able to write in markup and have their ideas translated directly into product features. So, I have some friends that are doing startups that are AI-based, and it's remarkable. They have just tiny numbers of people.
Yes.
We're trying to do everything with AI, and to the extent that these large language models can do it, it's a magnifying factor on what any one person can do. And so I kind of think we may see designers and product managers able to have much more impact because they can express their ideas in ordinary language and then have the large language models manifest those in features and code capabilities right away. It's been fun for me to do some personal projects using Copilot or ChatGPT to describe a spec and then get the code in Python and then say, no, that's not what I want. I want this. It's like the articulation of the product goal is the act of creating it.
So how accurate have you found it working? Like in your personal project, where's the accuracy right now?
It's promising, but not there yet.
Okay.
And it's pretty interesting too, I think, because I think if I wait 6 months, it'll be massively different. The rate of change within the models and their capabilities is so high that if you just give it some time, it's going to massively improve.
Great. I think everybody is just like, their question is, how can I be on top of like AI and all that? And I think learning about it. So great to hear from you. I think it's waiting to see what's happened in the next 2 or 3 years. But thank you for sharing these insights. It's really useful, and I hope it benefits other people.
Oh, I'm sure. I thought you meant the AI stuff. For sure, the AI stuff.
Oh, your insights.
I hope people do get benefit from this talk as well.
It's great. Thanks, Joe. Thanks for your time today.
Yeah, thank you.